The courthouse is already crowded when Isaiah Brooks, a respected black civil rights attorney, walks through the front doors carrying a leather briefcase filled with case files. Today's hearing is one of the biggest of his career. He is representing a family in a high-profile civil rights lawsuit against the city. His wife texts him, "Good luck. Dad says today is your day." Isaiah smiles. "Tell him I'll call after court." He enters the security checkpoint, exchanges a few words with the deputies, and heads toward courtroom 4B. Inside, lawyers organize documents while reporters quietly prepare their cameras outside the courtroom doors. A deputy suddenly looks toward Isaiah. There he is. Another deputy nods. "That's our defendant." Before Isaiah can respond, two deputies grab his arms. "What are you doing?" Isaiah asks calmly. "Hands behind your back. There has to be some mistake." Metal handcuffs click shut around his wrists. Conversations instantly stop. Everyone inside the courtroom turns to look. Isaiah remains remarkably composed. "I'm counsel in today's civil case," he says. The deputy ignores him. "Save it for the judge." Several attorneys exchange confused looks. One whispers, "Isn't that Attorney Brooks?" The deputies begin escorting Isaiah toward the defense table. His briefcase falls to the floor. Legal files scatter across the polished courtroom floor. The room fills with uneasy silence. Isaiah calmly repeats, "My bar identification is inside my jacket pocket." One deputy refuses to check. "We'll sort it out later." Meanwhile, the actual defendant has not yet entered the courthouse. The judge walks into the courtroom. Everyone rises. Except Isaiah, whose hands remain cuffed behind his back. The judge immediately notices. "Counsel, why are you in restraints?" The deputies confidently answer, "We've detained the defendant, Your Honor." The judge looks confused. "No, you've detained Mr. Brooks." Silence. One deputy hesitates. Another quickly reaches for his radio. At that exact moment, several journalists outside the courtroom realize something extraordinary has happened. People begin recording through the courtroom windows immediately after the hearing is briefly recessed. Within minutes, courthouse visitors post clips online describing what they witnessed. A law student tweets, "They handcuffed one of the state's most respected civil rights attorneys, inside his own courtroom." The video begins spreading rapidly. Isaiah's wife receives dozens of messages before she even understands what happened. His father quietly turns off the television. "I prayed this day would be different." Security footage is reviewed. Hallway cameras. Body cameras. Court surveillance. Everything tells the same story. Isaiah calmly identified himself repeatedly. He never resisted. He never raised his voice. Yet assumptions were made before verification. The courthouse issues an emergency statement acknowledging a serious procedural failure. But public reaction has already exploded. Legal organizations condemn the incident. Civil rights groups demand accountability. Former judges call the mistake deeply alarming. Television stations replay the footage throughout the day. Millions watch the moment when the judge says, "No, you've detained Mr. Brooks." The sentence becomes symbolic. Inside the courthouse conference room, senior officials begin an internal investigation. One supervisor quietly admits, "We acted before we confirmed who he was." Isaiah simply replies, "That's exactly why this happened." Weeks later, the investigation concludes. The deputies violated identification procedures and failed to verify basic information before using restraints. The courthouse announces sweeping reforms. Mandatory verification procedures. Expanded bias awareness training. Additional courtroom oversight. At a public press conference, Isaiah stands before microphones. He looks at the cameras calmly. I wasn't humiliated because someone made a simple mistake. He pauses. I was humiliated because assumptions replaced facts. The crowd remains silent. My case isn't unique. It's simply one that happened in front of enough witnesses to force people to pay attention. His speech spreads nationwide. Law schools begin discussing the incident in ethics classes. Courthouses across the state review their own identification procedures. Months later, Isaiah returns to the very same courtroom. This time, every deputy greets him respectfully. The judge smiles. "Good morning, counselor." Isaiah nods. "Good morning, Your Honor." He walks confidently toward the counsel table. No handcuffs. No assumptions. Only dignity. The courtroom where he was once mistaken for the accused becomes the place where meaningful reform begins. This is no longer just the story of one courtroom mistake. It is the story of how prejudice can begin with an assumption, and how justice begins only when the truth is allowed to speak.